Much of the 2020 campaign is being fought on social media. Each candidate has devised their own strategy to reach voters, mostly on their cell phones. They've used videos and nicknames and sound effects, memes, and more to target their opponents. And surprisingly, the older candidates are the ones really pushing the boundaries on social media. That's according to a new article from Axios that looked into the 2020 candidates and their social media tactics. So joining me now from Washington is the writer of that article, Sarah Fisher. She is a media reporter for Axios. Hey, great seeing you, Sarah.
Good to see you, too.
So this is a really good topic, and you're so right that it is sort of the older candidates that are really sort of getting almost down and dirty when it comes to social media. Can you briefly give us the rundown of the different Democratic candidates' social media strategies or profiles?
Yes, so Michael Bloomberg is the one that's really pushing the envelope here. He's done all sorts of crazy things that we've seen a lot of times corporations do, big brands do on social media, but we haven't always seen big national politicians do it. He's paid people to post stuff about him, up to $2,500, just regular Californians on Instagram and Facebook. He's hired meme accounts to, distribute memes on Instagram. He's tweeted satirical tweets, kind of mocking Bernie Sanders, that he later had to clarify were satirical. I think they actually later deleted those tweets. He's done all sorts of things to kind of push the envelope, things that some of the younger candidates like Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar even comparatively, would never dream of experimenting with. And then as far as the other candidates, and remember, all of these candidates are pushing 80 years old, 78. Bernie Sanders has been really owning the meme game, and he has been for a long time. He kind of has that very sort of caricature type of figure. He's been played by Larry David in SNL, and so his personality plays really well on memes. And then the last one is Joe Biden. I mean, he recently has been being a little bit more creative with his social media presence, I think in part as a last-ditch effort ahead of South Carolina primary to make sure he's getting attention down there. But like I said at the top, Emery, you're not seeing some of the younger candidates, especially Pete Buttigieg, who are a little less experienced, going crazy on social media, because I think they want to have an aura of authority and experience. So they don't want to mess with that, especially because they, quite frankly, he lacks some of that experience that the older candidates have.
Okay, so I want to ask you about two of the candidates, Bloomberg and Sanders. Now, I want to ask you about Sanders, because even though this isn't sort of part of his formal social media strategy, part of his presence has to do with those, as they're called, Bernie bros, right? Some of his supporters online come off as trolls, and the candidate has certainly sort of criticized that sort of behavior, but it's definitely part of his social media footprint.
It's a huge part of his social media footprint, and it has been since the 2016 campaign. I mean, this is not the first time we've seen something like that this cycle. You'll remember Andrew Yang struggled with this. The Yang gang was getting a little bit out of control online. I think one of the things, the challenges that Bernie Sanders is going to face is that in positioning himself as sort of the anti-establishment candidate, he's thus positioning himself as the anti-establishment media candidate. And so the trolls that you reference are people that are going to go after mainstream media. They're going to go after other candidates. They're going to be very direct in their language. And so it doesn't surprise me that people feel as though they're being almost a little bit inappropriate and that the campaign has to distance themselves from that support network, even though, quite frankly, it also is helpful to him in rallying support on the ground.
And so, I mean, can this sort of thing backfire? Or even, Bloomberg with some of his more lighthearted memes or tweets, can this alienate voters?
It can backfire for sure. I mean, especially when you have people coming out and saying Bernie bros are harassing me online. It's never good for a campaign. But I'll say this, the end of the day, this is the attention election. What matters is, are people talking about you? Are you a part of the headlines? Donald Trump really understood that in 2016, and quite frankly, he leveraged internet culture to propel him to the top of the ballot because he knew how to win the attention economy. That's what you're seeing Democrats on the left do right now. And I think that race, as you mentioned, really is coming down to between Bernie Sanders and Michael Bloomberg, at least online.
So we know that Bloomberg is spending a ton of money, and not the last debate, but I think the sort of the debate before when he wasn't on the stage. They were sending out all these memes, these funny memes, and it sort of got the distinct impression that he was trying to appear, I don't know, lighthearted or funny or show like another side to his personality. But if people know he's throwing a ton of money at social media, does all of that even have an impact? Does it just come off as an attempt to manipulate?
It could easily come off as an attempt to manipulate. The one thing that voters can sniff out better than anything is authenticity. And if you're paying people to do these memes and it doesn't come off as authentic, then you can look kind of dumb. But I think one of the things that the Bloomberg campaign has done really well is they've kind of tapped into their own joke. You know, they understand that they're throwing billions of dollars at this in ways that other campaigns can't, and they're leaning into it. They're not hiding away. They're not shying away from it. You know, he's very open about the fact that he's using his war chest to get ahead on Super Tuesday. And that aspect of it seems a little bit more authentic to me. Even if the messaging seems a little bit weird, the fact that he's like, I got a lot of money and I'm going to use it, I think that can resonate with some people who are like, good for you. Right. Go on and take Donald Trump.
So we did get into a little bit of trouble. I think 70 Twitter accounts, pro-Bloomberg Twitter accounts, were suspended. 70 is actually not a lot when you consider the number of accounts that are out there. There was a Bloomberg video that was edited, and it was heavily criticized. Are there any other candidates that run the risk of finding themselves in trouble because of their social media strategy?
Yeah, well, Bloomberg has really pushed the envelope, but other people have experimented with some stuff, too. You'll remember that Elizabeth Warren took out a Facebook ad with a bunch of lies in it because she wanted to test Facebook and say, hey, look, it's ridiculous that you can get away with buying this type of thing. I mean, there are some murmurs on Capitol Hill about, you know, changing the law so that you can't buy ads with explicit lies in them. So she might be one example. But really, Bloomberg is the outlier here. No one else is going to the same levels, the same extremes as he is when it comes to sort of platform manipulation, with the exception, of course, of Donald Trump, who's done a really good job at sort of pushing the boundaries, at putting up some sort of like hyper-sensational messaging online that hasn't really been crossing the rules of these platforms, but tiptoes it just close enough that they can get away with it.
All right, Sarah Fisher, great talking to you.
You as well. Thank you.